I was born and raised in Venezuela. Venezuela was a magical place. Then it all started changing in the late 90s when Hugo Chavez rewrites the constitution, changes the name of the country, changes the flag, changes the coat of arms, changes the time zone. He basically starts just trampling on Venezuelan history, records, and just showing that it's now his place. So as that starts happening, you could imagine most people start selling everything they have and try to get their money out of the country, out of the hands of this lunatic. I started noticing that the currency starts breaking. The bank is willing to lend me bolivares at 30%, but inflation was in the thousands. And so then I started noticing the guys that bought it with a loan from the bank multiplied. Not only do I not want to hold the coupons, I want to owe someone coupons. I borrowed 1,000 bolivares at a time where I could buy, let's just call it 1-to-1. I borrowed 1,000 bolivares from the bank and I could use those 1,000 bolivares to buy $1,000. So to repay the 1,300 bolivares I owe the bank, I have to sell 25% of, I have to sell $250. So I sell $250, repay the bank 1.3 and pocket $750. So when I saw that, I said to myself, if I shorted the Bolivar against the dollar and Bitcoin is doing the same thing to the dollar, what is the next logical step? Short the dollar using Bitcoin.
They're all Bolivares, don't you get it?
In my lifetime, Venezuela has wiped 14 zeros from our currency. Fiat doesn't die, it resets. So long as there will be any fiat, I will help people short it.
Welcome to Sat Chats, the Bitcoin podcast where we chat about sats. Sats are the smallest part of a Bitcoin, the same way pennies are the smallest part of a dollar. With Sat Chats, we are building the world's biggest Bitcoin welcome center to serve as your gateway to generational wealth. So if you are brand new to Bitcoin, we want to chat about sats with you. Head to satchats.com to grab your slot in the studio today. I'm your host, Stuart Bitcoin Dad.
And I'm number 40, Anna Bevan, Chief of Stuff.
And today in the virtual studio is number 122, Mao. If you are a Bitcoiner, you know that Mao is at the head of Ledn. If you are a pre-coiner, don't worry. This guy is about to tell us the story of when his family had to escape from Venezuela with their Bitcoin on their wallets. Mao, why don't you introduce yourself to our Satillionaires and then let's hear your Bitcoin story.
Hey guys, great to be here and thank you for having me. I'm Mauricio, as you mentioned, Mao. My friends call me Mao. And I am the co-founder and chief sales officer at Ledn. Yeah, I'm excited to share my story today and my family's story on why Bitcoin, why I do what I do, and we built what we built. And really, it all stems from what Bitcoin did for us, for me as a person, and for my family.
So you grew up in Venezuela?
Yes, I did. I was born and raised in Venezuela, and growing up, you know, and I grew up in the late 80s and the 90s, and Venezuela was a magical place to grow up. There was always harmony. I grew up in Barquisimeto. It's a city in the center of the country. It's not a very glamorous city, but it's got everything you need. And I went to a good school. I lived close to my school, so I would walk to school. My dad has been always a serial entrepreneur since I have any memory, and I saw him sort of build businesses and jump and try things in different industries, and it was a fascinating experience, really. And then it all started changing in the late 90s when Hugo Chavez, who many know today as the dictator, or the guy that went up against the U.S. and in the UN and sort of expanded his communist franchise all over Latin America. But I saw that election. I actually remember when Chavez, I remember Chavez's two failed coup attempts. So Chavez, maybe to give some background, Venezuela is an oil economy, okay? And Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. So Venezuela has largely been a very wealthy country, largely known as a very wealthy country. And to put some numbers in perspective, when in the late 90s, before Chavez took office, Venezuela was producing 3.5 million barrels of oil per day. And even though it was a very successful country, it like any commodity country, the economy moves to the beat of the price of that commodity that you're exporting. So if oil has a great year in the markets, the Venezuelan economy does amazing. But if oil has a crappy year in the markets, it doesn't matter what you do from a politics perspective. The economy sucks and everybody's mad. And so Venezuela, like many other commodity nations, has this disconnect between the policies that the governments are electing and choosing to do, and that what that does to a society, and the economic outcomes of anyone in the country. Because you can have a terrible government and a great year for oil prices, and everybody thinks the government's great. Whereas you can have an amazing government with a crappy oil market, and everybody thinks the government sucks. And so there's this big disconnect between policies and what you experience in your day-to-day life, because so much of your economic reality goes back to this commodity that many times is unrelated to you. Like a doctor doesn't know how oil is doing. They just know that more people are coming and they're getting more cosmetic procedures, and his business is booming. And so he'll associate that to whoever is in office, incorrectly, mind you. And so what this created was a situation where for in the early 90s, in the late 80s to early 90s, there was these boom and bust cycles in oil prices. And it created a lot of frustration in the Venezuelan people, because they had, they had tried party after party, but things kept, sucking. The economy kept being bad, but it wasn't because these guys weren't, they were doing good things, but the oil prices didn't reflect that. And so you never saw it come through to you as a person. And so there was a lot of frustration built against the ruling, or the powers that be, the ruling class, because of how crappy the economy was doing. So this triggered a desire for change. And this culminated in a rogue member of the military trying to physically kill the president and take over the government by force. And this person was Hugo Chavez. And he failed and was jailed. And then he was released years later. And then he tried to overthrow the government again, a second time, failed the second time. And then he went to prison. So while being in prison, the oil markets are still in the gutter, and there's still a lot of frustration. So he continues to build clout and power even from jail. And he goes to the president that had 1 year left on his term, Rafael Caldera. I think this was 1998. And he says, hey, I'm going to organize another coup. I'm going to try to kill you one more time, even from inside this jail. So there's two ways we can do this. You release me and we go toe-to-toe in the polls, or I'm going to try to run another process and take you out by force from jail. And Caldera gives him his presidential pardon. Caldera awards Chavez with a presidential pardon so that he can exit jail and run as a politician. So Chavez exits jail, and this is not known to many people, but the first thing he does when he exits jail is he gets on a flight and goes to Cuba to get his training. And he comes back with this center of the road or middle of the road campaign, united together, not against the businesses, very much like an Obama type conciliatory tone. And the guy is very charismatic, incredibly well-spoken. And so he rallies a lot of support and he wins the election. And some families that knew what he was about saw immediately he's just a wolf in sheep's clothing, and we don't like what we're seeing here, and we're going to leave the country for a few years while his term runs out. Everybody thought he was going to be a one-term guy. My family was one of those families. So we went to Florida and spent 2 years in Miami. And I remember when I got to Miami, my Cuban friends, the people that I was meeting from Cuba, we were rolling up in Miami and showing up to school, and and I remember my Cuban friends would being like, "Hey, where are you from?" I'm like, "Oh, Venezuela." Yeah, we're just here. We just got some crazy election down there. We're just here for a few years. And my Cuban friends would look at me and go, "Aw, like you don't know what just happened to you guys. Get comfortable here, because your country's basically done. Like you're never gonna get rid of that."
How old were you when you had to move?
I was 15.
15 years
That's
old.
wild.
I cannot imagine that.
Yeah. And so I remember, again, my Cuban friends were all like, you won't be going back. And we were like, yeah, whatever, buddy. Like, that's not going to happen to us. You guys are an island, little people, we're an oil economy in the mainland. Like, there's no way. And, and so sure enough, within his first term, Chavez rewrites the constitution, changes the name of the country, changes the flag, changes the coat of arms, changes the time zone. He basically starts just trampling on Venezuelan history records and just showing that it's now his place, right? And I think, when you see somebody trying to rewrite the Constitution, man, that to me is the biggest red flag anywhere. So he starts dismantling the system, and he starts one of the first things he did was he shut down all the media that opposed him. So he stopped renewing licenses, and he very quickly media in Venezuela just became a propaganda machine. Like there was no independent media. He removed all of their licenses, and that was the first thing he did. Then he nationalized the oil company again, fired everyone there, and replaced the engineers with his friends and family. And that started the sort of death and decay of the Venezuelan oil apparatus, which, as I mentioned to you now, we were producing 3.5 million barrels of oil per day. If I were to tell you what is the daily production in Venezuela today, 30 years later, what number would you guess it is?
Well, I'm still processing. I'll give you my guess in a second, Mal. I'm still processing the fact that
The time
Hugo
change.
Chavez changed the time zone
Yeah.
of Venezuela. If that's not the most arbitrary, like, use of government power ever. I mean, that to me is as if Chavez said in Venezuela, gravity will now be 9.9 meters per second squared, not 9.8.
Right.
That's
Absolutely.
so insane.
My favorite, and not favorite actually, my most hated change that he did, of all the things he did, well, my most hated constitutional change to the identity of my country, was the fact that the Venezuelan coat of arms, which is in our flag, has Simón Bolívar's horse. So Simón Bolívar was the guy that liberated half of America, but he was Venezuelan. He liberated us. And his horse is in the coat of arms. So Simón Bolívar's horse on the coat of arms was trotting towards the right. He flipped the horse so that the horse was to be seen as trotting towards the left.
What?
Just for symbolism, because he wanted to show that Venezuela was a leftist country. And that was just such a slap on the face for anyone that just didn't agree with his views. It was just so frustrating to watch. Let
me give you my guess about the barrel of oil. So
I will make my guess off of your guess.
All right. Well, because now we're having some fun here. And if you're having fun / completely shocked by Mauricio's story here about his time in Venezuela, smash the subscribe button for stories like this every day on YouTube.
Every day.
We want to put 10,000 subscribers underneath our Arbol de Navidad.
Ooh.
So, okay, by the 25 de diciembre, all right?
Wow, this is getting really fun.
It's getting real Espanol in here. Now,
yeah.
To thank you all for helping us reach 10,000 subscribers by Christmas of this year, we will select one from among you at random and drop 2 million sats on your head. And you get to keep your version of Simon Bolivar's horse facing whatever direction resonates the most with you. We won't even ask you to make that change. We won't change your time zone for you.
No.
So if Venezuela was making, I think, did you say 3.5 million barrels a day back in the day when things were going well? Okay. So I'm going to say 30 years later with a nationalized company, I know that stuff is always a loss in efficiency. It's kind of wild for me to, I think most Americans just assume that the Middle East has the most oil. Kind of wild to learn that Venezuela actually does.
Yeah.
I'm going to say at least 1.5 million barrels lost per day because of hijinks. So I'm going to throw 2 million barrels per day out there on the dial. What do you got, Abes?
Okay, I am going to guess that it's under 1 million.
Under 1 million? No way.
I'm guessing, man. I'm just throwing it out here.
There's no way Venezuela would just wreck themselves that hard. So let's hear what Mao has to say. I mean,
like, we're changing time zones.
Drum roll. 680,000.
680,000 barrels per day, down from 3.5? That is insane.
Guess who was right?
Abe's was right. I mean, that means Venezuela is just not making money right now.
Yeah.
We're broke. There are rolling blackouts. This is the country with the highest amount of oil reserves in the world. Mind you, they are heavy crude. They're not as sweet and easy to extract as the Middle Eastern crude, but in terms of reserves, quantifiable reserves, they are the largest. The country has rolling blackouts. People can't even keep their lights on 24/7. There's food shortages. I mean, there's the telecom, like the entire country doesn't have internet. And it's just so, it's sad. I mean, part of me as a Venezuelan feels that's embarrassing, but it's not even embarrassing. It's just flat out sad. And so anyway, the other, the other things that start happening in Venezuela is Chavez starts expropriating buildings on national television. So he starts going on these very long sit down with your president shows. He holds these shows every Sunday where he sits for 4 hours. The guy doesn't stand up for commercial breaks, not even to take a piss. Okay, he speaks for 4 hours straight every Sunday. And some of these shows were done out in the open. So he would go on these walks and he would point at certain buildings and he would say, he would turn around to his like vice president of whatever. It's like, oh, minister, that building over there, that building used to belong to the cousin of Simon Bolivar. This building has some historical significance. What's going on in this building today? And then the guy would say, oh, it's an office building that hosts the offices of so-and-so multinational. And Chavez would go, expropriate it. And everybody would stand up in roaring applause. And then he'd go, what about that building? That one belonged to the nephew of so-and-so. Who's there now? Well, it's an office building, and it has some commercial lots on the ground floor. Expropriated. And people, and I was sitting there going, what is happening? And so as that starts happening, you could imagine most people start selling everything they have and try to get their money out of the country, out of the hands of this lunatic, right? And so you start selling your houses and you start trying to buy dollars. You start selling your inventory in your business, you start trying to buy dollars. You start selling your second and third car or vacation home and you start trying to buy dollars. The point is everybody's trying to get out of the local currency into the dollar so that they can get them out. And immediately that basically evaporates the Venezuelan exchange rate. Nobody wants to hold these bolívares, and nobody wants to get rid of their dollars. So dollar prices in Bolivar currency start skyrocketing, and inflation starts skyrocketing. And what the government does in these situations, as you know, some people might think, well, oh, if that's the case, then the government is going to work really hard to give people more reasons to not want to sell their local currency, right? Like give them some assurances so they can stop leaving. But in fact, that's not what happens. What happens is the government shows up and says, oh, you're trying to get out here? It's illegal to buy dollars. Immediately illegal to buy dollars. No banks can buy dollars. No dollar deposits in your local banks. Nobody can buy dollars except from me at the price that I set. And so it becomes illegal to protect yourself. So your currency is getting debased. It's becoming worth nothing. Nobody wants to buy your house. Your house is worth half of what you thought it was. Your business starts suffering. And most importantly, people start leaving, especially the smart people and the wealthy people and the people that understand what's happening and have a lot to lose. Those are the guys that start leaving first. And ironically, the government wants this. The government wants this because these are the same people that oppose them. And so the quicker, easier path he can give all the people that he knows disagree with him to get out, the more he knows he'll control the narrative. The more he knows he will choke funding for his opposition. So he actually creates a highway for you to get out. And they start creating these programs. For instance, there was one that would subsidize in many ways you sending your kids to study abroad. And I know that a lot of people don't think of this as like a potential policy tool for authoritarianism, but think about it. If you're a kid that is interested in going abroad for schooling, you probably don't think that the local education is the best. Therefore, you are aware of the outside world. You might have an idea of what freedom is like. You might want to go taste a little bit of liberties and property rights in other places. And you, therefore, are a dangerous individual to have in a communist, socialist country. Therefore, he goes, oh, no, here, I'll make it real easy for you to go to North America or Europe to go to school. Here, go take the money, go. Hopefully, you'll do well, you get a job. And there you go. You stay out of my life forever. And it's a very interesting thing because, again, I'm a product of that program. I use that program to pay for part of my education in Canada, where I ended up staying. And basically, the system made it easier for anyone that might be a free thinker, that might be able to inspire someone in the future, that might be able to create some type of movement or support some type of movement. They want those people out. And so it's super, like they want you to leave, but they want to basically keep all your wealth, right? And so they want to keep your buildings, your houses, take over your businesses, your cars, but they don't want you there, right? And so it's fascinating because these things can be done, right? Like there are policies to do these things or that lead to these types of outcomes. And so as this is happening, the currency starts breaking. And as the currency starts breaking, keep in mind, throughout this, I'm like 16, 17. Okay. So I'm like looking at the world, trying to make sense of what's happening. And I'm for my 15, 16 years, I was in Venezuela. Then I returned and in Miami. Then I returned to Venezuela when I was 17 to graduate, to do my grade 11 in Venezuela. And when I got back, so many things had changed. Among them, one thing that stuck with me was there were people that were, because currency was getting devalued so quickly that it was really hard to understand whether you were making money on something or losing money on something, because people looked at the price of things in bolívares, but they didn't often look back at what those bolívares are worth in dollar terms. And so there was this really funny thing where in school I was learning that when you buy an asset, like let's say you buy a car, you buy a brand new car, and you pay, $50,000 at the dealership, and you drive that car for whatever 300 miles or whatever, not 300, like 30,000 miles, and then 2 years later, that car is worth, I don't know, 30, right? It's worth less in dollars than what it was when you paid for it. In Venezuela, people were buying Toyota trucks. This truck, in particular, this truck called the Machito, which is like a 2-door Land Cruiser. And they would buy these trucks, and they'd say, "I bought this truck for 100 million bolivares." Okay, they would drive it around for 2 years, and then they would resell the truck for 200 million bolivares 2 years later. And they were walking around being like, "I'm a genius. I made 100 million bolivares, drove the truck for 2 years. I'm a genius." And I was looking at this going, what is going on? Like, how can this be? And of course, if you divided the 100 million that he originally paid for in dollars, he was paying 50K. And if you divide the 200 million he was getting 2 years later, that was less than 35. It was like 30K. But they weren't looking at that. They were looking at the Bolivar things. And so to him, he had a profit. And especially if he had taken out car financing for that car, because the financing was, you were paying basically, I think it was like 30 to 40% year over year for financing costs, but inflation was in the thousands. And so then I started noticing, like, the guys that bought it with no leverage did very well. The guys that bought it with a loan from the bank multiplied. Like, they didn't do well, they multiplied. And then I started noticing that as the currency starts breaking, you start saying, okay, well, hold on. The rate of appreciation of the dollar, of the US dollar, in the parallel markets, because keep in mind, the official government market is fake. It's just the price that he sets, and that nothing trades at that level. It's you're keeping track by asking your friends, what's the price of the dollar today? There's no feed, there's no bank number. It's like this guy's quoting this much, the other guy's quoting that much, and then you have to figure out what you want to pay, where you want to transact. There's no central feed, there's no regulators, there's no government protections. You're just trying to make sense of things with very little reference points, artisanally, if you would. And so through these things, you start getting some reference points, and you're saying, okay, well, the value of the US dollar is inflating in Bolivar terms, is inflating at a couple thousands% year over year. And the bank is willing to lend me Bolivares at 30% year over year. So presumably, I could just take out a loan for 30% year over year and buy this thing that's appreciating at 2,000% year over year. And so you say, so I did it. I went and I did that. I put on my first short on the local currency. And the way you do that is you take a loan from the bank this time, in this case. And so let's just say, for argument's sake, I borrowed 1,000 bolivares at a time where I could buy, let's just call it 1-to-1. I borrowed 1,000 bolivares from the bank, and I could use those 1,000 bolivares to buy $1,000. Okay, so let's say I did that, and I waited a year. Okay, so I owe that bank 300 bolivares in interest. I need to pay that bank back 1,300 bolivares at the end of the year. Okay, but I took the bolivares and I bought dollars with it. So I have $1,000. Over the course of that year, the exchange rate between the bolivar and the dollar went to 5. Okay, so I have $1,000 that are now worth 5,000 bolivares. So to repay the 1,300 bolivares I owe the bank, I have to sell 25%. I have to sell $250. Does that make sense? So I sell $250, repay the bank 1.3, and pocket $750. And so I looked at that, and I did the first one, and I was like, I go back to the bank. I'm like, how much can you give me? They're like, well, you can borrow another 10,000. I was like, I'll take it. And then I went to the next bank. It's like, how much can I borrow? and they're like, it surged.
How old were you when you first realized you could speculate in this way?
When I was starting to do these trades, I was, I think it was in my 20s, like early to mid 20s, when I started putting these on. And so, basically the banks loved me because I was paying them back, and they were mandated to lend, even though they were getting crushed. They were making money on the back because they were getting these backroom deals with the government. So the government just said, listen, lend this money at 30%. I'll make up for it. I'll make you whole. You just lend that money at 30% because we need the economy to pretend that it's churning. And so I would go to them, and the banks had a mandate, and all they wanted was like, okay, well, what are the odds this guy's going to pay us back? They in many ways, they knew what you were doing. So they knew the chances of you not repaying them were very little because you had the assets. Right. And so they were kind of in it. They knew what was happening, but they didn't care because they were getting the money from the government anyway. And they were getting all these other crazy backroom deals. So they were just printing cash, and they were just trying to keep the government happy. So I was going up and taking all the money I could get at 30%. Because I was buying things that were appreciating in thousands %. So to me, it wasn't a matter of like, 30% money. No, it's like, what are you buying with it? That's what makes the whole transaction whole. So anyway, through this process, I was learning that, the things that I had learned in school, which were save a little bit of your paycheck every month for a rainy day, keep it in a savings account in case something happens one day. And I was looking at my some of my friends, their parents were like doctors and teachers. And so they all followed these like playbooks religiously, and they were like putting away fiat into their little savings accounts and paying down their mortgages and like not taking on debt and, just being responsible. And they were broke. They were so broke. And on the opposite end of that, I was watching my dad, who, like me, he was on the dinner table being like, so how much can you lend me? Only 20 million? Only 20 million? I can pay more. I can pay a higher interest rate. How much can you lend me? No, I can pay 50. I can pay 60. How much can you lend me? And so this much, I'll take it. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'll take it. And so, and then he was going out. He would. One thing I remember is when we went shopping, he would run his cards until they basically rang declined, and it was always like a drum roll when we went to these. Sometimes we would go to like Burdines in Miami or whatever when we were traveling, and we would run the cards from the different banks until one would show decline. But to my dad, he pronounced it decline. And so we would basically go, and then when one right now, he was like, decline, and we were like, decline. And so it was like a family thing, because like he basically maxed out everything. And so I'm comparing and contrasting these two things, and I'm like, my dad is thriving using debt wisely in an inflationary environment. These people that don't get the inflation and savings dynamics are getting smoked. And I'm looking at it, and I'm saying, you're just, people just don't understand that their money is getting debased into infinity, right? Like, and so there's there's two worlds. There's the people that see how money works, and they see that it's something that the government manipulates, and it is a political tool. Look, money today is a political tool. It's not a medium of exchange, like fair and open and transparent. It is not. It is so far away from that. It is like a food stamp that is widely accepted. Okay, think of it that way. Think of money like a food stamp or like a government coupon that they can print millions and millions and millions of. And you're out here saving these coupons, working really hard to get these coupons, and they're just going out being like, oh, somebody else did something we liked. Here's so much more coupons to you. And you're just sitting here being like, wait, but they just got the coupons. I had to work for these freaking coupons. And then once you get that and you understand that, you're like, not only do I not want to hold the coupons, I want to owe someone coupons. Because I know how bad you're debasing the value of these coupons. So I don't want to be the one holding these coupons. I want to be the one owing these coupons to someone else.
Oh,
This is so exciting.
Owing the coupons to someone else. Okay.
I'm getting so hype right now.
Yeah, this is really good for me too, because I have struggled to understand how to take advantage of that inflationary environment through the use of debt or through owing coupons, because I get afraid that I'm gonna get upside down, you know?
Little stressy.
This is the playbook that people like me and my family have been running in Venezuela since 1999. This is the same playbook that people were running in the Weimar Republic when the German franc was getting crushed back in the 40s. This is the same playbook that you run when you are in Zimbabwe or in Nigeria, where your naira is getting debased. When you understand that there is a massive disconnect between what the government tells you and what you experience, you start challenging that. For example, we are told, and I say we, you guys are in the US, we have been told that over the past 10 to 20 years, inflation has been 3%, give or take, right? Okay. Has the price of that home you like down the street in 10 years, has that appreciated by 3% year over year?
No.
It's gone way up.
Way more than that, right? Way more than that, right? Okay. What about stocks? Way more than that, right?
Way more than that.
Totes.
What about gold?
Gold crushing.
Way more than that. What about Bitcoin? Way more than that. What I'm trying to say is they are lying to you. The inflation is not 3%. That 3% is a made up number. If you really want to know the purchasing power that your money is losing, a closer approximation to that, do this. Google what the budget deficit of the United States in 2025 is. The United States is spending $2 trillion more than it can make, than it has. So it actually is. The number came out at 1.9. Okay. So how do they make up that difference? How do they make up that difference of that delta, of that deficit? How do they cover the deficit?
They just print it, right?
They print 1.9 trillion new US dollars. Okay. So new, freshly minted out of thin air, $1.9 trillion came into the market in 2025. Now, the next question to that is, okay, well, 2 more trillion are out there, but like how many are out there now? Like what's the base of units that is floating around? And as per Grok that I'm looking at right now, there is $22.12 trillion is the size of the US money supply. So they are pumping 10% more units of money into the economy just in 2025. There isn't 10% more Bitcoin in 2025. There aren't 10% more houses in 2025. There aren't 10% more stocks in 2025. There isn't 10% more gold in 2025. So the only inevitable outcome of all of this is that the prices of the things that we love are going up by 10%. That is what your money is getting debased at. So if the bank or anyone is lending you at anything lower than 10, you do not ask questions. Does that make sense?
Whoa, you're just like, okay. I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna be at the dinner table tonight, like Mal's dad. I'm like, all right, now you're saying you can hook me up 5% on a HELOC, correct? All right, only 150,000. I can do 6%.
No, but hear me out, okay? There's responsible and irresponsible ways of using debt. Debt is just like a power tool. It's like a hammer. It's like a jackhammer. If you use it right, you're gonna build a house much faster. If you use it wrong, you can cut your arm off. Okay, you can break a bone. So it's like any other power tool. You have to learn how to use it, how to hit it in the right angle. Where do you hit the nail? Where do you place the nail? But once you know these things, you're gonna build much faster than other people. because you're using a tool that others aren't necessarily aware of the power it has. And so now to bring you back to how this relates back to the my journey in Bitcoin. So when I saw that, I really, if you distill down what I was doing in Venezuela, is I was shorting a weak currency with a stronger currency. I was borrowing in a very, very weak currency, the Venezuelan bolivar, and I was investing in a stronger, relatively stronger currency, the US dollar, because Venezuela was like in the same way that I just showed you, the US is printing 10% year over year. Venezuela was printing 200%, 300%, 500%, right? And so you can actually do really, really well if you just do these things on a relative basis. You don't have to be a rocket science. You just have to have something that's less bad than the next thing that you're borrowing. So when my family, the sequence of events is in this middle of these capital controls, it becomes very, very difficult for you to get rid of your bolivares for anything that anybody, that because most people hold on to the good assets. And so this is why they say good money drives bad money out, because nobody wants to spend their good money. Why would you freaking do that? You spend the bad money, the one that's getting that's worth less every minute. And so you start saying to yourself, okay, well, how do I get rid of this bad money? Because in Venezuela, you were getting paid on Fridays. If you didn't sell that thing within 2 hours, you had lost 50% of your work if you had to wait till Monday. So it was a desperation that forced you to have to get out of the bolivares. And in that environment, nobody wants to sell their dollars. Nobody. And so the dollars go very short supply, and the price just keeps reprice higher for the few that are around. My brother's friend in Houston found out about Bitcoin, and he wanted to set up a miner in his dorm room, but his dorm room didn't allow him to set up a miner. Plus, electricity was very expensive in Texas where he was. So he calls my brother, and he goes, hey, let's set up some Bitcoin miners together in Venezuela. And my brother goes, what's this Bitcoin thing? And so my brother starts finding out about Bitcoin, sends the white paper to my dad and I, or my dad then sends it to me, gives my dad an ultimatum, says, I have to do this. My dad sends it to me. He was worried. He's like, what is this? I want him to leave the country, but this, he seems pretty set on this. And so I read the white paper, and that was my first run into Bitcoin. I didn't really, what I gathered from that was, you need hydro, you need cheap power, you need internet, and you're going to get this thing that you can then sell in the rest of the world. So presumably you can sell it for dollars, and you're going to be really well because you're not stuck in the Venezuelan economy. So my brother starts mining Bitcoin, and I go down 6 months later. He's doing phenomenally at a time where all my other friends are leaving the country. I asked him,
what year was that?
So this is late 2015, early 2016.
Okay.
And I go down there, and I see he's got double the machines he originally bought. And I'm starting very, very skeptical. And I'm like, what are you really doing? Show me. He's like, I'm selling Bitcoin. Let me show you. And so this was the moment for me, because when he showed me this, like I've mentioned to you, it was impossible for you to buy. It was very hard for you to, even if you had the bolivares, it was very hard for you to buy dollars with those bolivares at any rate, because nobody had dollars to get rid of. Like they just wanted the people. Even if you had bolivares, it was very hard to buy a dollar. And if you had a dollar, it was hard to transact with confidence, because everything was P2P. There was no government, so transacting in a P2P manner was always just very risky. And I remember when my brother is generating Bitcoin. So for me, the true test of fire was, if you say you've generated $100 worth of Bitcoin, fine. Can you trade that Bitcoin for $100 worth of bolivares at the real worth of the dollar? Does that make sense? So for example, like the test was this: if my brother said, let's just say the Venezuelan exchange rate to the the bolivar to dollar exchange rate was $4. Okay, 4 bolivares. Okay, and my brother was going to sell $100 worth of Bitcoin. Okay, the test was that 400 bolivares had to land in my account. because that meant that he was able to sell $100, equivalent of $100, at the what they called back then black market price, but it was actually the real free market price. And so what this meant was this is now an asset that you can buy and sell in a free market with liquidity. And so my brother sells $100 worth of Bitcoin in this example. 400 bolivares hit my bank account in an hour. I in that moment, I thought to myself, this is the dollar supply, like this is the asset that everyone's been waiting for. And slowly you started hearing the phenomenon where people were getting paid on Fridays and they were calling their friends that sold the dollars and say, they would go, hey, Luis, I need $200, man. I got paid. I need to get rid of these bolivares. And Luis would go, brother, I don't have any dollars. I don't have any cash. I don't have any wire transfer dollars. I have this thing called Bitcoin though. You can buy it. It's not gonna be worth half by Monday. And then come Monday, you can figure out how to sell it in some, overseas exchange or something, and for dollars. And you would go, do I keep the bolivares and for sure keep half of this by Monday, or do I try this thing I've never heard of? And you're like, fine, Luis, what do I have to do? Just sell me this Bitcoin thing. Like, what is it? What do I have to? It's like, go download a wallet, memorize a word, give me a string of characters, and you're just sitting there going, like you're just going along. You're like, sure. Like, here, what is it? Whoops. Okay, here's the strings of letters there. Like, send it. And so, boop, you got it. And it's Friday, and you're like, fine. Whew. Bought $200 worth of Bitcoin Friday. I'm good. At least I know it'll be, not 100 by Monday. And so we'll wait. And then, I'm going to go enjoy my weekend. Then they come back to the desk on Monday and they're like, okay, let's check on those $200 I bought. And they're like, and then you see that the screen, and the screen says it is worth now $210. And you look at the screen and you go, but I bought 200. And then you call Luis, did you not send me $200 worth of Bitcoin? He goes, yeah, I did. Because I sent you this many sats. And you look at the screen and you're like, well, that's how many sats I have. But it says 210. It's like, yeah, the price of Bitcoin changed. And you're like, in dollars. The price of Bitcoin went up in dollars. And Luis is like, yeah. And then for many Venezuelans, this is the first time they've ever seen something appreciate in dollar terms. And they're saying to themselves, wait a second. And they're looking at this thing on a chart and they're starting to feel like they're Warren Buffett. Okay? Like they're bought the S&P 500. And they're looking at this and they're going, I am a genius investor. I'm not going to sell this thing. Why would I sell this thing? And then you go, how can I get more of these, Luis? And Luis goes, yeah, no, they're still for sale. They're just now a little more expensive. So next time you get paid, I can do the same. And you're like, okay, next time, definitely, you're gonna give me some of this again, okay? And then so you start seeing that not only does it hold its value in US dollars, it can also appreciate in US dollars, because even though the US dollar might be better than the Bolivar, it's still fiat. It still gets debased. And so you look at that and you say, oh my God. So when I saw that, I said to myself, if I shorted the Bolivar against the dollar and Bitcoin is doing the same thing to the dollar, what is the next logical step? Short the dollar using Bitcoin. That's the next logical step.
Here we go.
And then the question is, how do you do that? Well, you borrow dollars using the Bitcoin you have as collateral, or you borrow dollars unsecured from a bank and you buy the Bitcoin with it. If you are somebody that already has Bitcoin, the way you do that is not by selling your Bitcoin for dollars to spend it. You borrow against the Bitcoin. With an asset like Bitcoin, even if you're borrowing at the stated rate of debasement, which is 10%, okay? And again, at Ledn today, you can borrow against your Bitcoin at 12.4%, and those rates are trending lower. Michael Saylor, that's not too different than the rate Michael Saylor is paying. Michael Saylor has a 10% coupon on STRC. And if you add in all the administrative costs of carrying that position, it's probably close to 11 or 12. So Michael is gladly paying the market 10+% in interest because he's using that money to buy Bitcoin, which is appreciating at way more than that 10+%, because it's getting not just debasement, but debasement plus monetization. So the point I'm trying to make here is that if you do nothing, inflation in the fiat system acts as a headwind to your savings, because you're trying to earn a percentage and they're basically diluting the value of that money by another percentage. And so you have to really fight just to thread water, right? When you're saving fiat. And if you turn that around and you say, well, what if I owe fiat? What if I owe fiat and I have to come up with the 10%? But if let's just say for argument's sake, let's just say I borrowed at 12%, 12.4%, the Ledn rate, okay? And the US, dilutes the monetary supply by another, projects to dilute the monetary supply by another 10%, okay? What if throughout the course of 2025, they end up picking a fight with whoever, and they have to now print an extra 2 trillion that weren't accounted for? And what if that debasement went, instead of 10, it went to 20? And then what if you got a hurricane? We have to send another trillion in aid that we didn't anticipate. So that's another, now you're down to 25%. But keep in mind, your 12.4 is fixed. So the point I'm trying to make here is that even if you compare the projected deficits versus the realized deficits, there's a big delta, and that's not going through all the things they try to do to put makeup on those expenses and those line items, right? Like they'll show you 8.5. Who knows what the number really is, right? And so what I'm trying to say is that in a fiat system, debt, if used correctly, is your best friend. And it's because it's the system that uses the same nefarious dynamics of the system itself in your favor. And guess who is the number one debtor in the world, and the person that will fight tooth and nail to ensure they are able to keep this going, because it's the only way they can afford to pay back their debts? Guess who's that person?
The government.
The U.S. government.
Yes.
All governments. And
yes.
so they have the most important, I would argue, vested interest, strategic national interest in keeping this thing going. And will it fail eventually? Will we get to hyper Bitcoinization? Frankly, I don't know. My point is that, in my experience, if there's a currency that should have died a long time ago, is the Venezuelan Bolivar. And let me tell you what happens to those currencies. At least what I've seen has happened to my currency. They don't kill it. They changed it. They changed the color. They wipe zeros off it and they reissue the bills. In my lifetime, Venezuela has wiped 14 zeros from our currency. 14 zeros. I have lived through 3 different sets of bills with different animals and different faces on them.
Wow.
So the bad fiat doesn't die. It resets. And so my point is that so long as there will be any fiat, I will help people short it. Um, and, and that is all you're doing when you're taking, and that's the same thing, by the way, you're doing when you're taking out a mortgage. A mortgage is a ginormous short position on the US dollar anchored by a house. Do you see how that makes sense? You want me to break that down for you?
Well, let me see if I'm learning thanks to Mao here today. What you're saying there is something that every single American aspires to do, which is to own a home through a mortgage. You're effectively saying, hey man, I'll take on this debt in the US dollar because I believe that the home I am buying is going to increase in value against this currency. Because the homes, we're not building 10% more of them each year, and you're making 10% more money each year. So over the life of the loan, it will become easier for me to repay it because the value of the home is soaking up like a sponge all the extra dollars that the government is printing, because the government must print in order to continue along. And when you have a lifetime like Mal's, which is insane to have been treated to this story here today, you realize that every single form of money that is issued as a centralized government token that only works inside its own borders, they're all Bolivares. They're all
exactly.
Bolivares.
Exactly. Everything is Venezuela. It's just not evenly distributed.
That is wild.
And like, mind you, debt, as long as you're using it to buy a hard asset and you're getting it at a reasonable rate, it's hard to mess it up. Like it's like, it's voluntary. You're walking into the terms. You have to know the terms. You have to know what you're going to do with it. But if you use it right, it is what every single wealthy person today, or at least the vehicle through which a lot of America, most of America has built their wealth on the back of dollar shorts, disguised as mortgages on their first homes.
This is the hot take I needed
today. This is insane. Well, this is just wild. And I think something major has clicked for me here today, because I've lived with this idea in my head that it's safer for me to be a Saifedean maxi and just work and earn money, store it in Bitcoin, and have that add up over time. No debt, don't get upside down, none of that business, because that I don't understand it. It's too scary for me. But I've also wanted to be a Michael Saylor maxi and just absolutely crack this infinite money glitch and conduct a speculative attack on the dollar and just like basically accept that I have in fact found a sundering technology that is a before and after type moment in human history. And if I just yeet myself into this as hard as humanly possible, then I will be able to grow much faster than otherwise. Mm-hmm. And I've always struggled with, well, what happens if I take out a loan in US dollars and use it to buy Bitcoin, and I don't know, Icarus mode, I fly too close to the sun, the wax melts from in between my feathers and off I plunge into the Mediterranean. But with enough fearless investigation of how to do this, your story of getting a loan in Bolivares and using it to buy US dollars and then allowing time to pass where the US dollars that you got, you only need a fraction of them to pay back the original loan, which means you just straight up made money just because. Mm-hmm. That really hit.
So the reason Ledn is where it is today is because the people that have used our services responsibly since we've been around have all done well. And I think that's that's what I love what I do. I genuinely love what I do. And I think the gap is some people just don't understand how this all works and how you can use it to your benefit. But this is my job, and why I love coming on shows like this to explain what we do in a very simple way, hopefully in a simple way that resonates on how you can use it. What Ledn has been doing, and we've allowed the average person to put on the trade that Michael Saylor is putting on through MicroStrategy. It's effectively the very similar transaction. Is you're borrowing a weak asset, you're paying a good rate on it because you're using that to buy something that's appreciating at an even better rate. So how Ledn makes money and why this is a sustainable business is I don't keep the upside on your Bitcoin. That's your Bitcoin. My only job is to keep your Bitcoin safe, and it stays in custody throughout the time you owe me money. When I make money is in the difference between the rate of interest that I charge you on the coupons and the rate of interest that I source the coupons at, right? So people lend me coupons at, call it 10% annualized. And I lend those coupons back out to you at 12.4. So I make 2.4% in coupon terms.
Right.
It's your Bitcoin. I'm making money on the coupons. I don't need to make money on your Bitcoin. Right? And so that's why this whole thing works. And that's why we want to do nothing more than Bitcoin-backed loans, because if we are the best at that today, we are the biggest Bitcoin-backed lender in the world, which I'm still so proud of, because we fought so hard to come here. And the fact that we're here today, if we could just do this one thing, if we can do this one thing better than anyone else, the size of the prize for us and our clients is impossible to compute. And so we want to get this better than anyone else. We've gotten it right before others. We've gotten it right for 7 years, running on 8. And we want to keep that lead and be the partner, the financing partner for all of us looking to do the logical thing, which is don't let inflation be a headwind. Understand what it is and use it in your benefit. And so that's, in a nutshell, what we do.
You know, the reason why I can trust Mao and Ledn is because his business is able to operate in the difference between the interest rate at which he can get coupons and the interest rate at which I pay him for those coupons. Meanwhile, my Bitcoin goes up 100% over a 12-month period, and I don't even care at all whether I'm paying Mao 10 or 11 or 12 or 12. It's like, whatever, dude. So here's what we'll say to you, because it does seem like there's more to Bitcoin than we will ever be able to fit into a single chat about sats. So we do ask each of our guests if they'd be willing to come back on in 9 months to give us an update on their Bitcoin baby. Would you be willing to do that for us, Mao?
Hell yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Excellent.
Because there's like an infinite amount more to mine here with Mao. So we'll take a short break for our lead sponsor here. Then we're going to make you an offer in exchange for the incredible value that you brought to today's episode.
Exactly. Our lead sponsor is Ithaca Hummus, and they make the absolute best hummus. I don't know if you've had it. Have you had any Ithaca Hummus?
Ithaca hummus? No, I have had hummus. My wife loves hummus, but I have never had Ithaca hummus.
Okay, well, this hummus will change your life. It is made with all the freshest ingredients, super flavorful. The word that Stuart keeps using is mouthfeel.
The mouthfeel is on point.
The mouthfeel is great. And so we're going to act as your taste buds today for the flavor of French onion.
French onion. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Mmm. 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 It's a caramelized onion flavor.
On the top. So
smooth. Umami vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody get me like a meat and cheese sandwich with like lettuce, tomato, onion. I'm gonna slather that. That's gonna be my mayo. Bam.
Yeah.
And then
And it's kind of rainy and a little chilly. So
Yeah.
it is, French onion is the flavor for today.
That is comforting to me.
I have a lot of FOMO because it's about to be, it's lunchtime here. And I would love some French onion hummus.
Well, when you come back for your 9-month, just get you one of them direct flights to Raleigh, and we'll do it right here. We'll eat the hummus together, my friend.
Exactly.
I'm a big fan of North Carolina, so
yeah, let's go. Holler.
All right. At Sat Chats, we believe in value for value. And in exchange for your time, we'd like to offer you the choice between $50 of fiat or the equivalent of 43,100 sats. What would you like to choose?
I would like to donate those sats to the Human Rights Foundation and their Bitcoin initiative. That's what I would like to do.
So I'm hearing sats. I'm hearing sats. Which brings our show's scoreboard to 116 who have stacked the sats, along with 9 who need to listen to Mal's episode so we can click for them. We will donate those to the HRF on your behalf.
Correct.
For our satillionaires who want to check out Ledn along with Mal, where can we send them?
You can follow Ledn on X, is where we are the most active. At Hodl with Ledn is our handle. And Ledn.io is our website where you find information about everything we offer, and you can directly submit questions or anything you need to the team. Our DMs are open on Twitter or X, so feel free to DM us. We're also on like Instagram and those other apps, but we really mostly live on X. And I'm on X at Cryptonomist with an A at the end. So Cryptonomista. And my DMs are open. I live there basically. So reach out to me anytime. And I love talking about Bitcoin and answering questions about Bitcoin backed loans. So don't be shy.
Well, whew, okay. I mean, this show has been so incredible. We haven't even been able to share our origin story as a company, which involves Ledn and Mal. So that's going to come up in the we're going to put y'all on a cliffhanger for that. But Ledn is central to the beginning of Sat Chats. And
come on, you can't drop that cliffhanger at the end.
Oh, you got to come back in 9,
exactly
baby. You got to come back in 9, dude. To be continued. The Avengers will return. So, Satillionaires, if you enjoyed our chat about Sats today with Mauricio, which was insane, the biggest possible move you can make right now to grow Bitcoin adoption worldwide is to smash the subscribe button here on YouTube, because we are out here every day doing Satoshi's work, making brand new Bitcoiners out of pre-coiners, collecting the most bomb Bitcoiner stories of all time to help people stack their first Sats. Like I said earlier in the show, we want 10,000 subscribers underneath our Christmas tree, and we will put 2 million sats underneath yours in exchange to say thanks. You can join us every weekday at 11 a.m. here on YouTube for stories like this. Fridays is our live game show, TikTok Next Block, the live game show where you play for 1 million sats. If you want to be on the show, if you want to play the game, if you want to sponsor, you can go to satchats.com. All the information is there. If you want to send your Bitcoin to us for us to drive into the next brand new Bitcoiner that we mint right here in the studio, our addresses are in the show notes, along with links to Mal's profile on Twitter and to Ledn.io. Sat Chats is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice. Also, our guests' views are their own. Until next time, keep stacking those sats. Man, get on the phone. All right? Be like Mal's dad. Holy moly.
Show me the loans.
Yeah, you can only that much. I can do more. I can pay 50%. Oh my gosh.